It was a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon in a little neighborhood called Oakwood Lane. The sun was shining high in the sky, making everything look happy and warm. Kids were zooming around on their bikes, laughing and shouting as they raced up and down the street. Birds were chirping in the trees, hopping from branch to branch, singing their little songs. It was the kind of day that made you want to be outside, enjoying every second of it. And me? I was in my backyard, feeling super excited because I was setting up my brand new outdoor TV. Picture this, a big, shiny TV screen sitting right there in my yard. It was so cool. The screen was huge, bigger than any TV I'd ever had before, and it sparkled in the sunlight like it was brand new, which it was. I had a cold glass of lemonade in my hand, the ice clinking against the glass every time I took a sip. It was sweet and chilly, just perfect for a hot day like this. I could already imagine it, me, sitting back in a chair, watching the big game on that giant screen. The football players would look so big, like they were right there in my yard. I'd hear the crowd cheering, the whistle blowing, and I'd be grinning from ear to ear. It sounded like the best day ever, right? Well, that's what I thought too. But not everyone agreed with me. See, across the street from my house lived a lady named Karen Miller. Oh boy, Karen was something else. You know those people who always seem to find something to complain about? That was Karen. She was the kind of neighbor who'd peek out from behind her curtains, watching everything you did, just waiting for a chance to say something mean. If your dog barked too loud, she'd be mad. If you forgot to bring your trash can in right after the garbage truck left, she'd write you a note. She was like a hawk, always looking for trouble. And guess what? She wasn't just any neighbor, she was the boss of the HOA. That's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood, like how tall your grass can be or what color your house can be painted. Karen loved those rules more than anything. She'd walk around with a ruler sometimes, measuring people's lawns just to make sure they weren't too long. If they were even a tiny bit off, she'd send a nasty letter telling you to fix it. Most people in Oakwood Lane just rolled their eyes when they saw her coming. Oh, it's Karen again, they'd say, and then they'd go back to whatever they were doing. She was annoying, but nobody really took her seriously. But me? I was about to find out that Karen wasn't just annoying. She had some big secrets nobody in the neighborhood knew about. And my new TV? It was about to start something crazy, something I never saw coming. I thought I was just setting up a fun day for myself, but oh no, it was going to turn into a wild adventure. So, what do you think? Was my TV going to make Karen mad, or was there something way bigger hiding behind her grumpy face? Stick with me, because this story is going to get super exciting. Let's go back to that sunny afternoon for a second. I was standing in my backyard, wiping some sweat off my forehead. It was warm out, and I'd been working hard to get that TV just right. I had to carry it out from the garage all by myself. It was heavy, but I didn't care, I was too excited. I set it up on a little table I'd brought outside, plugging in all the cords and making sure it wouldn't tip over. The screen was so big that I had to step back just to see the whole thing. I turned it on for a quick test, and the picture popped up bright and clear. Yes. I said to myself, pumping my fist in the air. This was going to be awesome. I could already hear the game in my head, the quarterback shouting, the ball flying through the air, the crowd going wild. I grabbed my lemonade and took a big sip, feeling the cold drink slide down my throat. Everything was perfect. Well, almost perfect. Because while I was smiling at my new TV, Karen was watching me from across the street. I didn't see her at first. I was too busy admiring my setup. But if I'd looked up, I would have seen her standing there by her window, her curtains pulled back just enough for her to peek out. Her eyes were narrow, like she was already mad about something. She had her arms crossed, and her lips were pressed into a tight little line. Karen didn't like fun. She didn't like anything that wasn't quiet and boring. And a big, shiny TV in my backyard? That was definitely not quiet or boring to her. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who looks for trouble. I like to keep things easy. I wave at my neighbors, I mow my lawn, I don't make a lot of noise. I've lived in Oakwood Lane for a couple of years, and I've always gotten along with everyone well, almost everyone. Karen never really liked me. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I painted my mailbox blue once, and she said it was against the rules. I changed it back to white just to keep her quiet, but she still gave me dirty looks every time I walked by. I didn't let it bother me too much. She was just Karen, after all. Grumpy, nosy Karen. What could she do? Oh, I was about to find out. See, that TV wasn't just a TV to her. To me, it was a fun way to spend a Saturday. To Karen, it was like a giant sign that said, I'm breaking the rules. She didn't care that I hadn't even turned it on loud yet. She didn't care that it was my yard, my house, my TV. To her, it was a problem, and she was going to make sure I knew it. But here's the funny thing, while Karen was getting ready to ruin my day, something else was already happening, something she didn't know about. And it was going to turn everything upside down. Let me tell you a little more about Oakwood Lane so you can picture it. It's a small street, maybe 10 houses on each side. The houses are all pretty, with neat little yards and flowers growing by the doors. There's a big oak tree at the end of the street, that's where the name comes from. It's tall and wide, with branches that stretch out like a big umbrella. Kids love climbing it, even though their moms yell at them to get down. The street is quiet most of the time. You hear lawnmowers on weekends, dogs barking sometimes, and the ice cream truck jingle when it rolls by in the summer. It's a nice place to live, the kind of place where you feel safe and happy. At least, that's how it usually is. But that Saturday? It was about to get a lot less quiet. I finished setting up the TV and stepped back to look at it again. I couldn't stop smiling. I'd saved up for weeks to buy this thing. Every time I got paid, I'd put a little money aside, dreaming about how cool it would be to watch movies or games outside. And now, here it was, ready to go. I grabbed the remote and turned it on again, just to make sure it worked. The screen lit up with a big, bright picture, a cartoon I'd left on earlier. A goofy dog was running around, chasing its tail, and I laughed out loud. This is going to be so fun, I said to myself. I could invite my friends over, maybe even some neighbors. We could have popcorn and soda, sit outside under the stars, and watch whatever we wanted. It was like having my own little movie theater right in my yard. But then I heard something. A sound that made me stop smiling for a second. It was a door slamming loud and sharp, like someone was really mad. I looked up, and there she was, Karen Miller, marching out of her house. She had her phone in one hand and a frown on her face that could scare a bear. Her hair was pulled back tight, and she was wearing a bright pink shirt that made her stand out even more. She didn't walk across the street, she stomped. Every step was like a little earthquake, boom, boom, boom. I could tell she was coming for me. Oh no, I muttered under my breath. I took another sip of lemonade, trying to stay calm. Maybe she was just going to yell at me for a minute and then leave. That's what she usually did, complain, point her finger, and then go back inside. But this time felt different. She wasn't just annoyed. She looked furious, like my TV had personally insulted her. I set my glass down on the table next to the TV and turned to face her. Whatever she was about to say, I'd just listen and nod. No big deal, right? Wrong. So wrong. Because Karen wasn't just coming to talk. She was coming to start something huge. And what she didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that her big plan was about to backfire in the wildest way possible. My TV wasn't going to ruin her day. Oh no. Something much bigger was brewing, and it was going to turn Oakwood Lane into the talk of the town. Let's rewind a tiny bit so I can tell you more about me. My name's Jake, by the way. I'm just a regular guy. I work at a store downtown, selling tools and stuff like that. I'm not rich or fancy, but I like my life. I've got a little house on Oakwood Lane with a red door and a small backyard. It's not much, but it's mine, and I love it. I've got a dog named Buddy, a scruffy little guy who likes to chew on my socks, and a beat-up old car that still gets me where I need to go. I'm the kind of person who waves at everyone, even if I don't know them. I like making people smile. But Karen? She never smiled back. Not once. I'd seen her around plenty of times before that Saturday. She'd be out there with her ruler, measuring grass, or standing on her porch, yelling at kids to slow down their bikes. One time, she told me my trash can was too close to the curb. I didn't even know that was a rule. I just moved it and said, "Sorry, Karen," trying to keep the peace. She'd huff and puff and walk away, muttering about how people these days don't respect the rules. I didn't think much of it. She was just grumpy, that's all. Or so I thought. But that day, with my TV shining in the sun, Karen wasn't just grumpy. She was on a mission. And I was the target. I watched her cross the street, her flip-flop slapping the pavement with every step. She was holding her phone up like it was a weapon, her thumb already tapping the screen. I had a feeling I knew what was coming. She was going to complain loudly and probably tell me to take the TV inside. I sighed. Here we go, I said to myself, crossing my arms. I wasn't scared of her, but I didn't want a fight either. I just wanted to watch my game. The birds kept chirping, the kids kept riding their bikes, and the sun kept shining. It was still a perfect day, or it would have been, if Karen hadn't been heading my way. I glanced at my TV again, the cartoon dog still bouncing around on the screen. I didn't want to turn it off. I didn't want to give up my fun just because Karen didn't like it. But I also didn't want her banging on my door all day. What was I supposed to do? Then I remembered something. Something my buddy Mike had told me a few days ago. Mike works at the police station downtown. He's a cool guy, always telling me funny stories about his job. Last time we hung out, he'd said something weird about Karen. Keep an eye on her, Jake, he'd said with a grin. She's got some stuff going on. You'll see. I'd laughed and asked what he meant, but he just winked and said, you'll find out soon enough. At the time, I thought he was joking. Mike liked to tease me sometimes. But now, watching Karen march toward me, I started to wonder. What did he mean? Did Karen have a secret? And if she did, what did it have to do with me? I didn't have time to think about it too long, because Karen was almost at my fence. She stopped right in front of my yard, glaring at me over the little wooden posts. Her face was red, like she'd been yelling before she even got there. Jake, she shouted, pointing at my TV. What is that thing? I looked at the TV, then back at her. It's a TV, Karen, I said, trying to sound nice. I just got it. Pretty cool, huh? But she didn't think it was cool. Not even a little bit. Cool, she snapped. That noisy, ugly thing is against the rules. You can't have it out here. I'm going to call someone right now. She held up her phone and started dialing, her fingers moving fast. I raised my hands, trying to calm her down. Whoa, Karen, hold on, I said. It's not even on yet. It's not noisy. Look, it's just sitting there. But she wasn't listening. She turned away from me, talking into her phone already. Yes, hello, she said loudly. I need to report a problem. I stood there, watching her, my lemonade sweating in my hand. A problem? Really? It was just a TV. I wanted to laugh, but I also wanted to groan. This was so silly. Why did she care so much? Most people would have just said, nice TV, and kept walking. But not Karen. She had to make it a big deal. And that's when I started to think, maybe this wasn't just about the TV. Maybe something else was going on with her. Something bigger. Something that Mike knew about. So, what do you think, huh? Was my TV really going to ruin Karen's day, or was there a huge surprise waiting around the corner? I didn't know it yet, but that Saturday afternoon was about to turn into the craziest day Oakwood Lane had ever seen. Stick around, because the story is just getting started, and it's going to get wild. I'd barely plugged in the TV when I saw her. Karen Miller. She was storming across the street like a tornado, her phone already in her hand. Her flip-flop slapped the pavement hard, slap, slap, slap with every step she took. She looked mad. Really mad. Her face was all red, and her eyes were squinted up tight, like she was about to yell at the whole world. I was still standing in my backyard, holding the TV plug in one hand and my lemonade in the other. The TV wasn't even on yet, it was just sitting there, quiet as a mouse. But Karen didn't care about that. Oh no. She was coming for me. This is unacceptable, she shouted, her voice loud enough to scare the birds out of the trees. She waved her arms around like she was trying to direct traffic, pointing at my TV like it was some kind of monster. That noisy contraption is against HOA rules, she yelled. I'm calling 911 right now. I just stood there, blinking at her. 911? For a TV? That's the number you call when there's a real emergency, like if your house is on fire or someone's hurt. Not for a TV in someone's yard. I couldn't believe it. Was she serious? I opened my mouth to say something. Karen, I started, keeping my voice nice and calm. It's not even turned on yet. Look, it's not making any noise. I pointed at the TV, which was just sitting there on its little table, all quiet and shiny. The screen was black, no cartoons, no football, nothing. I thought maybe if she saw that, she'd chill out. But nope. Karen wasn't listening to me. Not even a little bit. She shook her head so fast her hair bounced around, and she gave me a look that could melt steel. It was a mean, angry glare, like I'd just ruined her whole day. You'll regret this, she snapped, her voice sharp like a teacher scolding a kid. Then she started dialing her phone, her thumb jabbing at the buttons like she was mad at them too. I stood there, still holding my lemonade, watching her. My glass was getting sweaty in my hand, little drops of water dripping down the side. The ice was melting fast in the hot sun, but I didn't care. I was too busy trying to figure out what was happening. Karen was calling 911 over a TV that wasn't even on. It was so silly I almost laughed. Almost. But I didn't, because she looked serious, like, really serious. Her lips were pressed together tight, and her eyebrows were all scrunched up. She held the phone to her ear and turned away from me, like she didn't even want to look at me anymore. Yes, hello, she said into the phone, loud and bossy. I need help right now. Now, let me tell you something about me. I'm a chill guy. My name's Jake, and I don't like trouble. I'm not the kind of person who yells or fights with people. I just want to have a good time and get along with everyone. If someone's mad, I usually just shrug and let them cool off. Life's too short to get all worked up, you know? So when Karen started yelling and dialing, I didn't get mad back. I didn't shout or argue. I just stood there, sipping my lemonade, figuring she'd tire herself out soon. She'd yell for a bit, wave her arms some more, and then go back to her house. That's what I thought, anyway. I'd seen her get mad before lots of times and it always ended the same way. She'd huff and puff and then leave. No big deal. But this time? Oh, this time was different. And here's the thing, Karen didn't know something. She didn't know I'd already heard a little secret. Something interesting. Something that might make her wish she'd stayed inside that day. See, I've got a buddy named Mike. He's a cool guy who works at the police station downtown. Mike's always telling me funny stories about his job, like the time a guy tried to ride a goat through town, or when someone called the cops because their cat stole their sandwich. He's got the best stories. But a few days ago, he told me something different. Something about Karen. We were hanging out at my house, just sitting on the porch with some sodas. Mike leaned back in his chair, grinning like he knew something big. Hey, Jake, he said, you know that lady across the street? Karen. I nodded. Yeah, what about her? I asked. He took a sip of his soda and said, she's got some stuff going on. The police are looking into it. I blinked at him. Looking into what? I asked, curious now. But Mike just laughed and shook his head. You'll see, he said, his eyes twinkling like he was teasing me. Just keep an eye on her. It's gonna be good. I tried to get more out of him. Come on, Mike, tell me, but he wouldn't spill. He just winked and changed the subject, talking about baseball instead. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Mike liked to mess with me sometimes, so I figured he was joking. Karen. In trouble with the police? That sounded crazy. She was just a grumpy lady who liked rules too much. What could she possibly do that the cops would care about? Maybe she yelled at the wrong person or something. I laughed it off and forgot about it. But now, standing there in my yard with Karen freaking out about my TV, it popped back into my head. What did Mike mean? Was there really something going on with her? Something big? I didn't know yet, but I had a funny feeling in my stomach, like maybe this wasn't just about my TV after all. I didn't say anything to Karen, though. I didn't tell her about Mike or what he'd said. I just kept my mouth shut and watched her. She was still talking on the phone, her voice getting louder and louder. Yes, it's an emergency, she said, waving her free hand around. There's a disturbance in my neighborhood. Right now. I could hear a tiny voice coming from her phone, probably the 911 lady trying to figure out what was going on. But Karen wasn't making it easy. She kept shouting, pointing at my TV like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. It's loud and awful, she said. It's ruining everything. I looked at my TV again. It was still off. No sound, no lights, nothing. Ruining everything? Really? I wanted to roll my eyes, but I didn't. I just stood there, sipping my lemonade, letting her do her thing. The sun was still shining, the kids were still riding their bikes down the street, and the birds were still chirping. Everything else was normal. But Karen? She was acting like the world was ending, all because of my quiet little TV. I started to wonder what she'd say when the police showed up. Would she tell them my TV was a monster? Would she demand they take it away? I pictured a cop standing in my yard, scratching his head, looking at the TV and then at Karen. Ma'am, he'd say, this isn't an emergency. That would be funny. I almost smiled thinking about it. Almost. Because even though it was silly, Karen's anger felt real. She wasn't just annoyed, she was furious. And that made me a little nervous. Why was she so mad? What was driving her crazy about this? Then I remembered Mike again. His words kept bouncing around in my head. She's got some stuff going on. The police are looking into it. What stuff? Was it something small, like she forgot to pay a ticket? Or something bigger? I didn't know, but I started to think maybe Karen wasn't just mad about my TV. Maybe she was mad about something else, something she didn't want anyone to know about. And maybe, just maybe, she was picking a fight with me to feel better about it. Like if she could boss me around, she wouldn't have to think about her own problems. I took another sip of lemonade, the ice clinking in my glass. It was almost gone now, just a little puddle of sweet water at the bottom. I set the glass down on the table next to the TV and crossed my arms. Karen was still on the phone, pacing back and forth in front of my fence. She looked like a tiger in a cage, all restless and ready to pounce. Yes, you need to send someone now, she said, her voice sharp. This can't wait. I could hear the 911 lady trying to talk, but Karen kept cutting her off. No, it's serious, she shouted. It's against the rules. I shook my head a little. Rules. That was Karen's favorite word. She loved the HOA rules more than anything. She was always talking about them, how your grass couldn't be too tall, how your car had to be parked just right, how you couldn't leave stuff in your yard. One time, she got mad at my neighbor Tim because he left a basketball by his garage for a day. A basketball. She wrote him a letter saying it was clutter and against the rules. Tim just laughed and tossed the ball to his kid, but Karen didn't think it was funny. She never thought anything was funny. And now here she was, telling 911 that my TV was breaking the rules. I didn't even know if that was true. I'd read the HOA book when I moved in. Well, I schemed it, anyway. It was boring, full of stuff like no loud parties and keep your trash cans hidden. I didn't remember anything about TVs. Could you really not have one outside? It didn't seem like a big deal to me. It's my yard, my house. I wasn't hurting anyone. But to Karen, it was like I'd broken every rule in the book. I started to feel a little annoyed. Not mad, just annoyed. I'd been so excited about my TV. I'd saved up for it, carried it out here, set it up all by myself. I just wanted to have some fun, watch a game, relax. And now Karen was turning it into a war. Over nothing. I thought about saying something like, "Come on, Karen, chill out." But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I'm a chill guy, remember? I don't like fights. So I just leaned against my fence, watching her, waiting to see what she'd do next. She was still pacing, her flip-flops slapping the ground. Slap, slap, slap. Her pink shirt was bright in the sun, and her hair was bouncing every time she turned. She looked like she could go on yelling forever. Yes, thank you, she said into the phone, finally stopping for a second. Hurry, please. Then she hung up and spun around to face me. Her eyes were wide, and her mouth was a tight little line. "The police are coming," she said, pointing at me like I was a bad kid. "You're in big trouble now, Jake." I blinked at her again. Big trouble? For a TV? I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. Instead, I just shrugged. "Okay, Karen," I said, keeping my voice easy. "We'll see." She huffed, crossing her arms, and stared at me like she was trying to scare me. But I wasn't scared. Not even a little bit. Because here's the thing, I had a secret too. Not a big one like hers, whatever hers was, but a little one. Mike's words. That hint he'd given me. Something about an investigation. Something that might involve Karen. I didn't know what it was yet. Mike hadn't told me the details. But standing there, watching Karen glare at me, I started to wonder. What if she wasn't just mad about the TV? What if she was worried about something else? Something the police knew about? I didn't say a word about it, though. I didn't let her see that I was thinking anything. I just smiled a small, easy smile and waited. Let her call 911. Let her yell. Let the police come. I wasn't worried. Not yet. But deep down, I was curious. What was Karen hiding? Why was she so worked up? And what did Mike know that I didn't? I had a feeling I was about to find out. And you know what? I was right. Things were about to get crazy, way crazier than a grumpy lady and a quiet TV. What do you think she was hiding? Stick around, because you'll see soon enough. Karen stood there in front of my yard, yelling into her phone like she was the boss of the world. "Yes, officer, it's an emergency," she shouted, her voice loud and squeaky. "There's a disturbance right now." She waved her free hand around, pointing at my TV like it was some kind of scary monster that had crawled out of the bushes. I could hear a tiny voice coming from her phone, the 911 lady, I guess, trying to talk to her. "Ma'am, please calm down," the voice said, all soft and quiet. But Karen wasn't calming down. Not even a little bit. She just kept going, her face getting redder every second. "No, you don't understand," she yelled. "It's awful. It's loud. It's breaking all the rules." She stomped her foot, her flip-flops making a loud slap on the ground. I leaned against my fence, holding my lemonade glass. The ice was all melted now, and the glass felt warm in my hand. I took a sip anyway, watching Karen freak out. My TV was still sitting there on its little table, quiet as can be. It wasn't on. It wasn't loud. It wasn't doing anything. But Karen was acting like it was blasting music or shooting fireworks or something crazy. I almost wanted to laugh, but I didn't. I just stood there, sipping my drink, letting her yell. She was digging her own hole, and I wasn't going to stop her. Not yet. She kept talking into the phone, pacing back and forth like a dog chasing its tail. "Yes, it's in his yard," she said, pointing at me now. "Jake's yard. He put it there, and it's ruining everything." I raised my eyebrows. "Ruining everything? Really?" The sun was still shining, the birds were still chirping, and the kids down the street were still riding their bikes. Nothing was ruined except maybe Karen's day. I shrugged to myself and took another sip of lemonade. Let her yell. She'd get tired soon. That's what I thought, anyway. But then I noticed something odd. Something that made me stop sipping and pay attention. A police car rolled up. It came slow and quiet, no sirens, no lights flashing. It was just a regular black and white car, creeping down Oakwood Lane like it didn't want anyone to notice. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, pulling up to the curb a little ways down the street. Two officers stepped out, one tall guy with a hat and another shorter guy with sunglasses. They shut the car doors real soft, like they didn't want to make a sound. And here's the weird part, they didn't come toward me. Nope. They turned and started walking straight for Karen's house. I blinked. Wait a minute. Karen was still on the phone, yelling about my TV, and she didn't even see them. She was too busy screeching about her emergency to notice anything else. "Yes, you need to hurry," she said, her voice so loud I bet the whole neighborhood could hear her. "It's a big problem." She waved her arm again, pointing at my TV like it was going to jump up and attack her. But those cops? They weren't looking at my TV. They weren't looking at me. They were walking up her driveway, calm as can be. I leaned a little harder against the fence, watching them. The tall officer had a clipboard in his hand, and the shorter one was looking around, like he was checking out the house. Karen's place was right across the street from mine, a little white house with a neat lawn and a big welcome sign by the door. It looked nice, just like every other house on Oakwood Lane. But those cops didn't seem like they were there to say hi. They had serious faces, like they were on a mission. And then something really weird happened. The tall officer glanced my way just for a second and gave me a quick nod. Like a little hey with his head. Then he turned back to the house and kept walking. I froze. A nod. From a cop? To me? What was that about? My heart started beating a little faster. Did they know me? Did they know something I didn't? Or maybe they knew something Karen didn't? I looked back at her. She was still yelling, her back to the street, totally clueless. Yes, it's against HOA rules, she said into the phone. I need someone here now. She hadn't seen the police car. She hadn't seen the officers. She had no idea they were walking up to her own house right that second. I set my lemonade glass down on the table next to the TV. My hands felt a little shaky, not because I was scared, but because I was starting to get curious. Really curious. Something was going on. Something big. I remembered what my buddy Mike had told me a few days ago. Karen's got some stuff going on, he'd said, grinning like it was a joke. The police are looking into it. I hadn't thought much about it then. I figured he was just teasing me, like he always did. But now, seeing those cops at her house? It didn't feel like a joke anymore. I kept my eyes on the officers. They were at Karen's front door now. The tall one knocked 3 loud knocks, bam, bam, bam. The shorter one stood next to him, hands on his hips, looking around. Karen still didn't notice. She was too busy shouting at the 911 lady. Yes, it's a disturbance, she said. A big one. I could hear the dispatcher again, trying to talk. Ma'am, what's the disturbance? The voice asked. Is someone hurt? Karen huffed. No, it's a TV, she snapped. A loud, awful TV. I almost laughed out loud. A TV. She was calling it an emergency because of my quiet little TV. It was so silly. But those cops at her door? That wasn't silly. That was real. I watched them knock again, bam, bam, bam. Still no answer. Maybe Karen couldn't hear them over her own yelling. Or maybe she was just too mad to care. I glanced at her, then back at the cops, then at her again. My brain was spinning. Why were they at her house? What did they want? And why did that officer nod at me? I didn't know any cops except Mike, of course. Was this what he'd been talking about? Was this the stuff Karen had going on? I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. I'm a chill guy, remember. I don't get worked up easy. But this was starting to feel like a puzzle, and I didn't have all the pieces yet. Karen was yelling about my TV, calling 911 like it was a big deal. Meanwhile, real police were already here, not for me, but for her. And she didn't even know it. It was like a secret hiding right in front of her face. I couldn't help it, I smiled a little. Just a tiny smile. This was getting interesting. Karen finally stopped pacing and stood still, glaring at me over the fence. They're coming for you, Jake, she said, her voice all smug. You're going to be sorry. She held her phone tight plus AR up like it was a trophy, like she'd won something big. I just shrugged. Okay, Karen, I said, keeping my voice nice and easy. We'll see. She huffed again, crossing her arms. You'll see, she snapped. They'll make you take that thing down. I didn't say anything back. I didn't need to. Because right then, I heard something a little creak. It was Karen's front door opening. I looked over, and there was her husband, Tom, standing in the doorway. He's a quiet guy, doesn't talk much. He was wearing a gray shirt and jeans, looking confused. Karen, he called out, his voice soft. There's some police here. They want to talk to you. Karen froze. Her mouth dropped open, and her eyes got wide. She spun around so fast she almost tripped over her own feet. What? She said, her voice all high and squeaky. She looked at her house, and for the first time, she saw them, the two officers standing on her porch. The tall one tipped his hat a little. "Mrs. Miller," he said. "We need to speak with you. Can we come in?" Karen's face went white. Really white, like she'd seen a ghost. Her phone slipped out of her hand and hit the ground with a little thud. She didn't even pick it up. She just stood there, staring at the cops, her mouth moving but no words coming out. What?" she stammered. Tom stepped outside, scratching his head. "They've got a paper or something," he said. "Said it's important." I watched it all, leaning against my fence. My TV was still quiet behind me, just sitting there. The kids down the street were still riding their bikes, laughing and shouting. The sun was still shining. Everything was normal except for Karen. She looked like her whole world just flipped upside down. And me? I was starting to think maybe it had. What was going on? Why were the cops at her house? And what did that nod from the officer mean? I didn't know yet, but I had a big feeling that this was just the start. Karen thought she was in charge, calling 911 on me. But now it looked like someone was checking on her. And whatever they wanted, it wasn't about my TV. Karen finally hung up her phone. She held it up high, like it was a prize she'd just won. A big, smug smirk spread across her face, like she thought she was the smartest person in the whole world. "The police are on their way," she crowed, her voice loud and proud. She pointed at me, standing there in my yard, and nodded like she'd just beaten me in some big game. "You're in trouble now, Jake," she said, crossing her arms. "They're going to make you take that noisy TV down." She looked so happy, like she'd solved all her problems by calling 911 on me. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Not a mean laugh, just a little chuckle. It bubbled up out of me because the whole thing was so silly. She thought she'd won, but she didn't know what I knew. Karen," I said, keeping my voice nice and easy. I lifted my hand and pointed behind her, across the street. "They're already here." Karen's smirk froze. Her eyes got big, and she spun around so fast her flip-flops almost flew off her feet. Her head whipped toward her house, and when she saw what I was pointing at, her face went white like a ghost, or a piece of paper with no color at all. Her mouth dropped open, and she didn't say a word. She just stared. The two police officers were walking up her driveway, calm as could be. The tall one with the hat held a clipboard in his hand, flipping through some papers. The shorter one with sunglasses walked next to him, his face all serious, like he wasn't there to play games. They didn't even look at me or my TV. They were headed straight for Karen's front door. Her little white house sat there, all quiet and neat, with its welcome sign swaying in the breeze. But those cops? They didn't look like they were coming to say welcome. They looked like they meant business. Karen's hand shook a little, still holding her phone. She blinked fast, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. What?" she stammered, her voice all squeaky and small. "What's going on?" The tall officer stopped at her porch and turned toward her. "Karen Miller," he said, his voice deep and steady. He looked right at her, waiting for her to answer. Karen nodded, but it was a tiny nod, like she wasn't sure she wanted to say yes. "Why yes," she said, swallowing hard. "That's me." The officer tipped his hat a little, all polite like. "We need to talk," he said. "Mind stepping inside?" He pointed at her front door with his clipboard, like it was no big deal. Karen's eyes got even wider. She looked at the cops, then at me, then back at the cops. Her head was spinning like a top. What?" she said again, louder this time. "This isn't about him." She jabbed a finger at me, standing there by my fence with my lemonade glass. She sounded mad, like she couldn't believe the police weren't here for my TV. "He's the one breaking the rules," she said, her voice shaking. "That thing is against HOA rules. I called you about him." The officer shook his head, slow and calm. "No, ma'am," he said. "This isn't about him." He paused for a second, looking at her with those serious eyes. "This is about you." Then he held up the clipboard and tapped a paper with his finger. "We've got a warrant to search your property." Karen's jaw dropped so low I thought it might hit the ground. "A W warrant," she squeaked, her voice barely there. She took a step back, almost tripping over her own feet. "What? Why? What's a warrant?" Her husband, Tom, poked his head out the door again. He'd been standing there, watching, looking confused. "It's a paper," he said, scratching his head. "They said it lets them look inside our house." Karen spun around to glare at him. "What?" she snapped. "Why didn't you tell me?" Tom shrugged. "I tried," he said. "You were yelling too loud." Karen's face went from white to red in about 2 seconds. She looked like she wanted to yell at him, but the officers didn't give her a chance. The shorter one stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said, "we need you to come inside now. We've got some questions." I stood there, leaning against my fence, watching it all go down. My TV was still quiet behind me, just sitting on its table. The sun was still shining, and the kids down the street were still riding their bikes, laughing like nothing was happening. But in front of me? Oh boy, something big was happening. A warrant? That's a special paper from a judge. It means the police can look through your stuff because they think you did something wrong. But what did Karen do? I had no idea. Well, not yet. But I was starting to think this was what my buddy Mike had been talking about. See, Mike works at the police station. He's my friend, and he told me a few days ago that Karen had some stuff going on. He didn't say what, just grinned and said I'd find out soon. I thought he was kidding at the time. Karen? In trouble with the cops? She was just a grumpy lady who liked rules too much. What could she do that was so bad? But now, watching those officers stand on her porch, I wasn't so sure it was a joke anymore. A warrant meant something serious. Something big. And Karen? She looked like she was about to fall over. She finally found her voice again. "This is a mistake," she said, waving her arms. "I didn't do anything. I'm the one who called you. He's the problem." She pointed at me again, her finger shaking. The tall officer didn't even look my way. "Ma'am," he said, "this isn't about a TV. Please step inside." Karen shook her head fast. "No," she said. "You've got the wrong person. I'm the HOA boss. I follow the rules." That's when it hit me, the big reveal. The officer with the sunglasses pulled out another paper from the clipboard and held it up. "Mrs. Miller," he said, "we've been looking into some complaints. People in this neighborhood say they've been getting fake HOA fines. Letters telling them to pay money for stuff that's not even against the rules. And all those payments. They've been going to you." Karen stopped moving. She stopped talking. She just stood there, staring at the paper like it was a snake about to bite her. The officer kept going. "We've got proof," he said. "Letters, bank records, emails. You've been scamming your neighbors for months, taking their cash and keeping it for yourself. That's illegal, ma'am. That's why we're here." "A warrant?" "Oh, yeah. Turns out, Karen had been running an illegal side hustle selling fake HOA fines to pocket the cash." My jaw dropped a little, even though I was trying to stay chill. Fake fines. Scamming neighbors. Karen. The lady who measured grass with a ruler and yelled about trash cans. I couldn't believe it. But it made sense, kind of. She was always so bossy, always acting like she was in charge. And now I knew why. She wasn't just grumpy. She was sneaky. Really sneaky. I remembered what Mike had said, "You'll see." He tipped me off earlier, but I never dreamed it was something this wild. I thought maybe she'd parked in the wrong spot or yelled at the wrong person. But this was huge. She'd been making up rules, sending out fake letters, and tricking people into giving her money. For months. And she thought no one would catch on. My buddy Mike must have known the police were onto her. That's why he grinned when he told me. He knew it was going to be a big surprise. Karen's voice came back, but it was all shaky now. "No," she said, stepping back again. "That's not true. I didn't do that." "You're lying." But the officers didn't look like they were lying. The tall one held up the warrant. "This says we can check," he said. "We're going inside now. You can come with us, or we can do this the hard way." Karen's eyes darted around, like she was looking for a way to run. But there was nowhere to go. Her husband, Tom, just stood there, blinking. "Karen," he said. "Is this real?" She didn't answer him. She just kept shaking her head, muttering, "No, no, no." The officers didn't wait. They walked past Tom and into the house, their boots thumping on the porch. Karen turned and followed them, still talking. "This is a mistake," she said. "I'm innocent. I didn't do anything." But her voice was getting quieter, like she wasn't so sure anymore. I stood there, watching it all, my lemonade forgotten on the table. My new TV was still behind me, shiny and quiet. The kids down the street kept riding their bikes, and the birds kept chirping. Everything else was normal. But across the street? Oh man, it was like a movie. Karen, the HOA queen, the rule lover, the lady who yelled at me about a TV, was in big trouble. Bigger trouble than I'd ever imagined. I couldn't believe how it went down right in front of my eyes. She'd called 911 on me, thinking she was so smart. But the police were already coming for her. And that nod from the officer? Maybe Mike had told them I was cool, that I wasn't the problem. I didn't know for sure, but I liked that idea. I smiled a little bigger, leaning against my fence. Karen thought she'd won, but she'd lost big time. What a twist, huh? The lady who loved rules was breaking them the whole time. And me? I was just standing there with my TV, watching it all happen. This was the wildest day Oakwood Lane had ever seen, and it wasn't over yet. Stick around, because the ending's going to be just as good. Karen's jaw dropped so low it looked like it might fall off her face. She stood there, frozen, as the two police officers walked her toward her front door. Her eyes were wide, and her hands shook like leaves in the wind. The tall officer with the clipboard held her arm gently but firmly, guiding her inside. The shorter officer with sunglasses followed behind, his face still serious. Karen didn't say a word at first, just stared at them like she couldn't believe what was happening. Then, as they stepped onto her porch, she started muttering, "No, no, no, this isn't right." But the officers didn't stop. They led her into her little white house, and the door shut behind them with a quiet click. I stood there in my yard, holding my lemonade glass. The ice was long gone, melted into a puddle of sweet water, but I didn't care. I was too busy watching everything unfold. My new TV sat behind me on its table, still quiet, still shiny in the sun. Across the street, something big was going down, and I had a front row seat. Neighbors started poking their heads out of their houses, like turtles peeking out of their shells. Old Mr. Jenkins from next door stepped onto his porch, squinting at Karen's house. Mrs. Lopez down the street opened her window and leaned out, whispering to her husband. Little kids stopped riding their bikes and stared, pointing at the police car parked by the curb. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. And me? I just leaned against my fence, sipping my warm lemonade, waiting to see what came next. The police car sat there, all black and white, quiet as a shadow. No sirens, no flashing lights, just waiting. I could hear muffled voices coming from inside Karen's house, but I couldn't make out the words. It sounded like Karen was talking fast, maybe yelling, and the officers were answering in calm, low voices. Tom, her husband, was probably in there too, scratching his head like he always did when he didn't know what to say. I pictured them standing in her living room, with its fancy curtains and that big welcome sign by the door. But today, it didn't feel very welcoming, not for Karen. Minutes went by, 5, then 10, then more. The sun was still high in the sky, shining down on Oakwood Lane like nothing was wrong. Birds chirped in the trees, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves. It was a perfect Saturday afternoon, except for the drama across the street. I finished my lemonade and set the empty glass on the table next to my TV. My hands were free now, so I crossed my arms and kept watching. I wasn't nervous or scared, just curious. Really curious. What were the cops doing in there? What did they find? And what was going to happen to Karen? Then the door opened again. The tall officer stepped out first, holding a big stack of papers in his hands. They looked like letters, tons of them, all messy and wrinkled, like someone had stuffed them in a drawer in a hurry. The shorter officer came next, carrying a laptop under his arm. It was one of those silver ones, sleek and shiny, with a little Apple logo on the back. Karen followed behind them, her face all red and sweaty. She wasn't yelling anymore, just muttering under her breath, shaking her head like she couldn't believe it. Tom trailed after her, looking lost, his hands stuffed in his pockets. The tall officer turned to Karen. "Mrs. Miller," he said, holding up the stack of letters, "these are fake HOA fines. We found them in your desk." He flipped through a few, showing her the papers. "You wrote these, didn't you?" Karen's eyes darted to the letters, then away, like she didn't want to look. "No," she said, her voice loud but shaky. "Those aren't mine. I don't know where they came from." The officer didn't even blink. "We've got proof," he said. "Your name's on them. And your fingerprints." Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She looked like a fish gasping for air. "Fingerprints," she squeaked. The shorter officer nodded, tapping the laptop. "And this," he said, "has all your emails. You sent these fake fines to people and told them to pay you money. We've got the bank records too. You've been keeping the cash." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Fake fines. Emails. Bank records. Karen had been scamming people, our neighbors, and taking their money. For months, she'd been pretending to be the big HOA boss, making up rules and sending out letters. If someone didn't mow their lawn fast enough, or left a toy in their yard, she'd write a fake fine and say, "Pay me $50 or you're in trouble." And people believed her. They sent her the money because they didn't want to fight with the HOA. But it wasn't the HOA's money, it was hers. She'd been sneaking it all for herself. Neighbors started whispering louder now. Mr. Jenkins shook his head and said, "I knew something was fishy." Mrs. Lopez called out from her window, "She made me pay $20 for my flowers being too tall." That wasn't a rule. Little Timmy from down the street ran up to his mom and tugged her sleeve. "Mom, did Karen trick us too?" His mom nodded, frowning. "I think so, sweetie. I paid her $30 last month for our dog barking." Everyone was talking now, piecing it together. Karen had been lying to all of us, taking our money, thinking she'd never get caught. But she did get caught. Big time. The officers kept talking to her, right there on her porch. "We've been watching you for a while," the tall one said. People started complaining. They said the fines didn't make sense. So we checked it out. And we found all this. He held up the letters again, and Karen's face went even redder. "This is unfair," she shouted, stomping her foot. "I didn't do anything wrong. I'm the HOA boss. I make the rules." The shorter officer shook his head. "Not fake rules," he said. "And not stealing. That's against the law." He pulled out a pair of handcuffs, shiny silver ones that clicked when he opened them. "Karen Miller," he said, "you're under arrest for fraud." Karen's eyes got huge. "Arrest?" she squeaked. "No. You can't do this. This is a mistake." But the officer didn't listen. He stepped forward, took her hands, and clicked the handcuffs around her wrists. Click, click. Just like that, she was caught. Karen started yelling again, louder than ever. "This is unfair," she screamed, twisting around as the officers led her off the porch. "I didn't do anything. Let me go." Her flip-flop slapped the ground as she tried to pull away, but the tall officer held her arm tight. "Calm down, ma'am," he said. "You'll get to tell your side at the station." But Karen didn't calm down. She kept shouting, her voice echoing down the street. "This is all his fault," she said, pointing at me with her cuffed hands. "That TV. He started this." I raised my eyebrows. "My TV? Really?" I didn't say anything, just stood there, watching her yell. The officers didn't even look at me. They walked her down the driveway, past the police car, and opened the back door. "In you go," the shorter one said, guiding her inside. Karen kept screaming, even as they shut the door. "Unfair! Unfair!" she shouted, her voice muffled now. I could see her through the window, banging her cuffed hands against the glass, her face all twisted up with anger. The tall officer turned to Tom, who was still standing there, looking lost. "Sir," he said, "we're taking her to the station. You can come down later if you want." Tom nodded slowly. Okay," he said, his voice quiet. "What do I do now?" The officer shrugged. Up to you, he said. Then he walked back to the car, climbed in the driver's seat, and started the engine. The shorter officer got in too, and just like that, they drove off. The police car rolled down Oakwood Lane, slow and quiet, with Karen still yelling inside. I could hear her voice fading away as they turned the corner until it was gone. I let out a big breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Wow. That was wild. I looked around. Neighbors were out on their lawns now, talking to each other, shaking their heads. Mr. Jenkins waved at me. Can you believe it, Jake, he called. She's been stealing from us. I waved back. Crazy, huh? I said. Mrs. Lopez walked over with her husband, still mad. I want my $20 back, she said. Flowers too tall? That's ridiculous. Little Timmy ran up to me, grinning. Did Karen go to jail? He asked. I shrugged. Looks like it, buddy, I said. He laughed and ran off, shouting, Karen's in jail. Karen's in jail. I turned back to my yard. My TV was still there, all shiny and new. The sun was starting to dip a little lower now, turning the sky orange and pink. It was getting late, but the day wasn't over, not by a long shot. I picked up my empty lemonade glass and smiled. Karen was gone. The police had her. And all those fake letters and that laptop. They proved she'd been lying and stealing. Justice was served, right there in front of my house. It felt good, like a big weight was off my shoulders, even though I didn't know I'd been carrying it. But the best part? Oh, the best part came later. The next week, I got a letter in the mail. Not a fake one from Karen, a real one, from the HOA. I opened it up, expecting maybe a warning or something about my TV. But nope. It was short and sweet. Dear Jake, it said. We checked the rules. Your outdoor TV is totally fine. Enjoy it. Sincerely, the Oakwood Lane HOA. I read it twice, just to make sure. Totally fine? I laughed out loud. After all that yelling, all that drama, my TV was okay. Karen had been wrong the whole time. I stood there in my kitchen, holding the letter, grinning like a kid on Christmas. This was perfect. Not only was Karen caught, but I got to keep my TV. No rules broken, no problems. I folded the letter and stuck it on my fridge with a magnet. Then I got an idea, a big, fun idea. If my TV was fine, why not celebrate? I decided right then and there to throw a watch party. A big one. I'd invite everyone, turn on the TV, and have the best night ever. Karen couldn't stop me now. That weekend, I made it happen. I spent all Saturday getting ready. I dragged chairs out to my backyard, big ones, little ones, even a couple of beanbags for the kids. I set up a table with snacks, popcorn, chips, cookies, and a cooler full of soda and juice. I hooked up my TV, turned it on, and tested it with a football game. The picture was bright and clear, and the sound was loud enough to hear but not so loud it'd bother anyone. Perfect. I printed out little flyers, nothing fancy, just watch party at Jake's. Saturday at 6. Bring a friend. And handed them out to all the neighbors. I even knocked on doors, smiling and saying, come over tonight? Let's have some fun. By 6 o'clock, my yard was full. Half the neighborhood showed up, maybe more. Mr. Jenkins brought his wife, and they sat in the front row, sharing a bowl of popcorn. Mrs. Lopez came with her husband and their little girl, who ran around chasing Timmy and his friends. Tom showed up too, all by himself, looking a little shy. Hey, Jake, he said, holding a soda can. Mind if I join? I clapped him on the shoulder. Of course, man, I said. Glad you're here. He smiled a little and sat down, sipping his drink. The game started, and everyone cheered. The TV screen lit up with players running across the field, throwing the ball, scoring points. Kids shouted every time someone made a touchdown, and grown-ups clapped and laughed. I stood by the snack table, watching it all, feeling happy. The air smelled like popcorn and grass, and the sky turned dark with stars popping out one by one. It was the best night I'd had in a long time. And the best part of the best part? We all knew Karen wasn't there to complain. No one was peeking out from behind curtains, no one was measuring the noise with a ruler. She was gone off at the police station, probably still yelling about how unfair it was. But here in my yard, it felt fair. It felt right. She'd tried to ruin my day with her fake rules and her 911 call, but she couldn't. Instead, she got caught, and we got to celebrate. As the game went on, people started talking about Karen. "I can't believe she tricked us," Mrs. Lopez said, shaking her head. "All those fines." Mr. Jenkins nodded. "She fined me $15 for my mailbox being too rusty," he said. "I thought it was real." Timmy piped up, "She told us our kite was too high. We paid her $10." Everyone laughed, but it was a mad kind of laugh, like they couldn't believe they'd fallen for it. I chimed in. "She called 911 on my TV," I said, pointing at the screen. "Said it was against the rules. But look, it's fine." Everyone cheered again, louder this time. "To Jake's TV!" Mr. Jenkins shouted, raising his soda can. "To Jake's TV!" the crowd yelled back, lifting their drinks. I laughed and raised my empty glass. "To no more fake fines," I said. They cheered even louder, clapping and whistling. The game ended with our team winning, and the yard exploded with noise. Kids jumped up and down, adults hugged each. Sure, here's the continuation to ensure we hit the 7,000 word mark while keeping it simple and engaging. High-fived, and even Tom smiled, a real smile this time. We stayed out there for hours, talking and laughing under the stars. The TV glowed in the dark, showing the score over and over, like it was proud of itself. I looked around at all the happy faces, Mr. Jenkins munching popcorn, Mrs. Lopez sipping juice, Timmy and his buddies kicking a ball around, and I felt good. Really good. This was what Oakwood Lane was supposed to be like, neighbors having fun, not worrying about fake rules or sneaky scams. As the night wound down, people started heading home. "Great party, Jake," Mrs. Lopez said, waving as she left. "Thanks for this." Mr. Jenkins patted my back. "You're a good kid," he said. "Don't let anyone tell you different." I grinned. "Thanks, Mr. J." Timmy ran up and hugged my leg. "Can we do this again?" he asked, big eyes looking up at me. "Sure thing, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. "Anytime." Tom was the last to go. He stood by the fence, holding his empty soda can. "Hey, Jake," he said, his voice quiet. "Sorry about, Karen." I shrugged. "Not your fault, man," I said. "You okay?" He nodded a little. "Yeah. Just, weird without her around. But I'll figure it out." I nodded back. "You will. And you're welcome here anytime." He smiled again, small, but real. "Thanks," he said, then walked off into the night. I cleaned up after everyone left. I stacked the chairs, tossed the empty popcorn bags, and wiped down the table. The TV stayed on, playing some late-night show now, all quiet and calm. I unplugged it and carried it back to the garage, setting it down gently. "Good job," I told it, like it could hear me. Then I locked up, went inside, and flopped on my couch. My dog, Buddy, jumped up next to me, wagging his tail. "What a day, huh?" I said, scratching his ears. He barked once, like he agreed. Lying there, I thought about everything. Karen in handcuffs, yelling about unfair. The cops finding her fake letters. The neighbors cheering in my yard. It was wild, like something out of a movie. But it was real, and it was over. She'd tried to boss us around, trick us, take our money. But she couldn't hide forever. The truth came out, and now she was gone, at least for a while. I didn't know what would happen to her next. Jail, maybe. A fine? Whatever it was, she'd think twice before scamming anyone again. And me? I got my TV, my party, and my neighbors back. No more peeking curtains, no more nasty notes. Just good times and good people. I closed my eyes, smiling. Justice was served, all right, served up big and loud, right here on Oakwood Lane. And it tasted better than lemonade. The next morning, I slept in. The sun was already up when I opened my eyes, shining through my window. Buddy was still snoozing on the couch, snoring like a little chainsaw. I got up, stretched, and made some cereal, big bowl, extra milk. I ate it slow, thinking about the party. Everyone had fun. Everyone was happy. That's what mattered. Karen couldn't take that away, no matter how hard she tried. After breakfast, I went outside to check the yard. It looked good, a little messy from the party, but nothing major. I picked up a few soda cans and tossed them in the trash. The grass was still green, the sky still blue. Everything was back to normal, or better than normal. Because now, we all knew the truth. No more secrets, no more scams. Just Oakwood Lane, the way it should be. I walked over to Mr. Jenkins' house later, just to say hi. He was out watering his flowers, humming a little tune. "Morning, Jake," he called, waving his hose. "Morning," I said back. "How's it going?" He grinned. "Better now that Karen's gone," he said. "That party was the best thing all year." I laughed. "Glad you liked it?" He nodded. "You're all right, kid. Keep that TV out. Drives her nuts, wherever she is." We both cracked up, picturing Karen mad in a jail cell somewhere. Back home, I grabbed the HOA letter off my fridge and read it again. "Your outdoor TV is totally fine." I stuck it back up, proud as anything. That letter was like a trophy, a little piece of paper saying I won. Not just me, the whole neighborhood. We all won, because Karen lost. Her fake rules, her sneaky tricks, they were done. And we were free. Days went by, and things stayed good. No more letters in the mail, no more yelling across the street. Tom stopped by sometimes, just to chat. He said Karen was still in trouble, big trouble. The police found more stuff on her laptop, more scams she'd pulled. She might be gone a while, he told me one day, sitting on my porch. "Wow," I said. "That's wild." He nodded. "Yeah. But it's quieter now. I kinda like it." I smiled. "Me too." The neighborhood settled down after that. Kids played, dogs barked, life went on. But every now and then, someone would bring up Karen. "Remember when she fined me for my fence?" Mrs. Lopez said one day, laughing. "Or my mailbox," Mr. Jenkins added. We'd all crack up, shaking our heads. It was funny now, funny because it was over. She couldn't boss us anymore. And the watch party? It wasn't the last one. I threw another a few weeks later, bigger this time, with a movie instead of a game. Everyone came back, plus some new folks from down the street. We watched a silly cartoon about a dog saving the day, and the kids loved it. Timmy sat right up front, cheering every time the dog barked. "This is the best," he shouted. I grinned. "Glad you think so." That's how it went, party after party, all summer long. My TV stayed outside, loud and proud, and no one complained. Not once. It was like a symbol now, a big, shiny reminder that we were free. Free from Karen, free from her scams, free to have fun. Oakwood Lane was ours again, and we weren't letting it go. Looking back, I still can't believe it all happened. One minute, I'm setting up a TV, sipping lemonade. The next, Karen's in handcuffs, and I'm throwing parties. Wild, right? But it worked out better than I ever thought. She got what she deserved, and we got our neighborhood back. Justice served, plain and simple. And me? I got the best summer ever, right here in my backyard. So that's the story. Karen's gone, the TV's fine, and Oakwood Lane is happy. What a ride. I'll never forget it, not the yelling, not the cops, not the cheers. And every time I turn on that TV, I'll think of her handcuffed and mad, driving away. Then I'll smile, grab a lemonade, and hit play. Because this is what winning feels like. So, that's the story. A nosy neighbor wanted to mess up my day, but she messed up her own instead. Funny how things turn out, right? Sometimes the loudest people are hiding the biggest secrets. If someone's being mean to you, just smile and wait. You never know what might happen to them next. What did you think of that crazy twist? Tell me in the comments, and share your wildest neighbor story. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Keep smiling, because good things come when you least expect it.